All right. Welcome, True Hope Online. Welcome, True Hope in person. It's good to be together. We're celebrating 5 years old today, so that's awesome. Yeah, very good. God's faithful, and today we're going to talk about that God works all things for good. We're in Matthew 2. You might have thought we flipped back to a month ago. We sang a Christmassy song, but it really was very perfect for Matthew 2, right?
Yes.
And so I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, but you do know the story. It is the wise men from the east and all that follows. So I call it God works all things for good, but some other things to just note in this story. Our God reigns.
Yes.
Our God is sovereign.
Yes.
He decides history, he makes it happen, he ordains it, and then completes it. It will be done the way he says it's going to be, right? His kingdom will never be overcome by evil. He thought he stole it from me, but it's become my testimony, right? God will work all these things for good, and God uses anyone he pleases. If we don't show up, it might just be a donkey. God will do what he's going to do. And so that's the backdrop. Those truths are the backdrop for our story. So if you've had a chance to read Matthew 2, what did you discover? What do you want to contribute to the conversation before I share some of the thoughts that I might have about this text? And if not, that's okay. I'll just keep going.
So,
No, you first.
okay, well, so a client of mine, she was telling me about this documentary on Prime that is called The Star of Bethlehem.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you've seen it.
Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh, it's so amazing. I did have to buy it for $6.99, but that's fine. Because I want to watch it over and over again. So it's this lawyer who's a devout Christian, and the Lord pressed on him to figure out what was the Star of Bethlehem? Where did it come from? Is it really a star? Did it really stop? Did it really travel? Did it really stop? You know, he wanted to know the truth. And it is phenomenal, the science and everything that he has done to figure out this, and he goes around and he speaks. Now, this documentary was done in 2006 or 2007. But it was fascinating how we now have the technology to track the stars to find out what was that star. And it was so great because it wasn't just, there was a phenomenon that happened. It's Jupiter is what we're seeing, is the star, as we're seeing it, because it's in the right spot, but then it aligns with other planets to make it super bright. But this all God had to put this in motion at the beginning of time, right? But there was a celestial thing that happened with the planets when they aligned when he was born.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then again, when he was conceived. I'm sorry. When he was conceived, there was a thing, and it's very, very cool. He's got it all packed out. But what was really, really cool is that two planets have to align just right to shine so bright for so long.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And because the Magi are astrologers,
mm-hmm.
right? They've been watching the sky, and this was this planetary thing happens every couple of years, but nothing like this.
Mm-hmm.
This was huge. This was just, and so they're just like, oh, this is a sign we have to follow. I mean, it was a huge, huge deal for all of this to happen from conception to birth, and then to have it last in the sky.
Well, and it reappeared, so it might have been another combination, right?
Right. And it's so fascinating, because I think it was, because Jupiter's so big, and we see it all the time, right? But this was so much more. And I guess there's a thing that Jupiter does that it orbits. To us, it looks like it I guess anyway, but on that time it did a retrograde thing, so it went backwards. It does this loop every once in a while, but it did this loop where it looked like, because he's like, how does it stop? Right? How does it go backwards, and how does it move, and how does it stop? But God made it so that it went backwards when they were following it, so that it would be shining over where Jesus was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's the power we have, that he's moving planets in line,
Right.
so that these magi of they're cultists, right? They don't follow God. They don't follow.
No, they're a different religion.
Totally different. They knew that they needed to come and they needed to bow down to our Lord.
Yeah,
so
it's good.
It was
Cool.
so cool. Well, I'll have to do a watch party or something, because it
There you
was
go.
fantastic.
That's cool.
I think following on that, I mean, that's, in the space realm, or whatever you call it, whatever the word is, but even in history too, right? Jesus had to be born in Bethlehem. So that all worked out perfectly with the census and, Joseph being from there. And then when they fled to Egypt, there's prophecy about that as well. They'll come out of Egypt. So, I mean, it all lined up perfectly.
Yep.
Not only the planets, but then
Everything
where it
else.
was on planet
Right.
Earth at the right time.
Even her giving birth, right? Like,
Yeah.
anybody who's given birth, which doesn't include me, but, knows you can't make it happen when you want to.
Only
So,
God could orchestrate.
but God can.
And then for her not to lay with another man and have a child
Yeah.
through the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Even as, and how they talked about things back then that are happening now.
Yeah.
Is amazing. And also, how even Herod, tried to destroy
Yeah.
and send the Magi as like spies.
Exactly.
And then having them go back and being told by an angel to go a different route.
Exactly.
I mean, everything was planned properly.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Exactly. God is sovereign.
We never see Jesus being born in a manger, though. You would think that he'd be born in a palace.
Right? Yeah. It's perfect. All right. Yeah. So they came from the east. They most likely came from, they were probably from the Parthian Empire, and they probably came from Babylon, but could have been from Persia or Arabia. They don't know where these guys came from exactly, but they came from the east, and they came and asked, where is he who was born King of the Jews? Even that is a crazy thing, because when babies are born to kings and queens, they're called something different than kings usually.
Princess.
But Jesus wasn't born a prince. He was born a king. So they even knew that. And they've seen the stars. So they were directed to Palestine. And they landed in Jerusalem because the star had disappeared for a while. It's only 5.2 miles from where their actual destination ended up being. But very interesting, right? That God allowed this because we needed the Herod visit to make all the prophecies come true. I mean, crazy if you think about it, right? And so Herod heard it, he was troubled. Well, let me tell you more about the Magi. They were actually priests in the Zoroastrianism religion. Aren't you glad we're one of those? Oh, you are, like Christians are just easier to say, right? And they predicted the future through dream interpretation, some magic, astrology. They used other methods, and so it was part of a religion. It was part of what they were doing. How many wise men came?
There was 4 of them.
Does the Bible actually say?
No.
No. No, it doesn't say. They think maybe as many as 300, because they had to travel a long way, and they had very expensive stuff with them, right? They would need supplies and stuff. 3, guys in robes are not going to do that. It's too dangerous, for one. So they think there was way more. So why were they looking? Yes, they were astrologers, but why were they looking for this particular star? Well, they were pursuing a prophecy from their prophet. I couldn't read it earlier. Zero Last. It's a very strange name. I should talk, but that is a strange name. So they saw this star when Jesus was born, but they had been looking because there was a prophecy about it in their religion that a king of the Jews would be born. A star would appear when the king of the Jews would be born. Crazy. So God had already planted all that, right? So they visited Herod, and Herod was troubled. That's like, he was really, really upset. And everybody else was scared because he had already killed his brother-in-law, his wife, and 3 sons. This is not a guy that you trifled with. So if he was upset, everybody was nervous. And so he gathered chief priests, and he wanted to know, so where, and this is the funny thing, he doesn't say where was the king of the Jews born. He actually says, where was the Christ born? So he knew very well the king of the Jews was also Jesus Christ, right? Well, not Jesus, but the Messiah. And so then it's the prophecy, Bethlehem of Judea, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. So Herod is Herod the Great. He ruled over the Roman-controlled Palestine. He was a great politician. He was a capable ruler. He loved power, and he wasn't in power because he was popular. He was in power because he had schmoozed the Romans into putting him in charge. He did restore the temple, but that didn't help his reputation with his fellow Jews at all, because he levied very oppressive taxes, and he also was a descendant from Edom, which was the enemy of the Jews. So they didn't like him at all. So he was evil, he oppressed the people, and he constantly was in fear of losing his power and authority. So this was a paranoid individual. So to this individual come the wise men saying, hey, where's the king of the Jews? It's like, I can't have anybody challenge my authority, right? Off with their heads. So then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, once he knew where it was going to be born, wanted to know the exact time, what Piper's been talking about, the exact time of when that star appeared. When exactly was this child born? I need to know exactly. And he sent them to Bethlehem and then said, go search and let me know, because I want to go worship him too. Lies. So when they heard the king, they departed, and the star they had seen in the east went before them, and apparently Jupiter, or whichever planet's combination, turned, came back, and it stood over the house directly where the young child was. Precisely. I mean, figure that out. Like, okay, so God moves planets. Great. This teeny tiny little, the universe is big, right? It's pointing exactly there. I mean,
right?
that what? And when they saw the star, and I love this sentence in here, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. I was talking to the little kids at the previous service, and I said, I think if they were kids, they would have jumped up and down screaming, right? They would be so excited. But they were, magi, so they probably, I don't know how they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy, but they did. And when they had come into the house, so is this at the same time that Jesus was born in the stable? No. Different word. They saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. They gave him the gifts, not mama, and they worshipped him. So usually when you go on a visit after somebody gives birth, you fuss over the mama, right? Not in this case. So these stately people must have bowed down to this little boy. It's quite a scene, I think. All 300 wouldn't have fit in the house, by the way. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented them with gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Gold is for him being the king. Frankincense is about, does anybody know? His deity, or being the priest. And frankincense points to, or myrrh points to his death. We have myrrh. We have myrrh resin. It's a resin for people to smell. It's a little musky smell. One of the people said, smells like men's cologne. So, it's a resin. I'll leave it here, or
Pass it around.
I'm going to make sure it's closed. And they, then, being divinely warned in a dream, they should not return to Herod. They departed to another country. So these priests from a religion that had nothing to do with our Heavenly Father, God still spoke to them, right? God will use anyone. And then there's the flight to Egypt. So now, when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. You know how many dreams that guy's had? The dream about you can take Mary to be your wife. I don't know. This is second or third dream, saying, arise, take the young child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I bring you word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. So Joseph gets a dream. This reminds us of other Joseph who had dreams. And those dreams, that Joseph took his family to Egypt to save him from a famine. This Joseph took Mary and Jesus to Egypt to protect them from being killed. At the time, there were about 1 million Jews living in Egypt under Roman rule. And so it was a really safe place to hide out because you wouldn't be noticed. You wouldn't stand out as the only Jewish people showing up. What's going on here? So Herod wanted to destroy the only one who had a legitimate claim to the throne, because he had usurped it, right? Really. So when he arose, he took the young child, his mother, by night, and departed for Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, saying, out of Egypt I called my son. First he'd called Israel. We did the whole Exodus journey, right? God called Israel, his son, out of Egypt to be a light to the world. How did they do?
Not so good.
God called Jesus out of Egypt, and he became the light of the world. Then Herod, when he saw that he was deceived by the wise man, was exceedingly angry. Okay, the wise men were exceedingly joyful. He is exceedingly angry, pretty mad over here. And he sent forth and put to death all the male children who were in Bethlehem and in all its districts, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the wise men. So he wanted to know exactly when that star appeared, remember? And then he probably added a little bit of time because they had disappeared. They didn't come back. And so he made sure. So the maximum age Jesus could have been was 2, but I think he was under 2, because otherwise he would have done 3 and down, I would imagine, because he was over 2. How do you know, right? So Jesus wasn't an infant anymore. He was under 2 years old. Now, it's sad. This is horrific, obviously. Right then was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, a voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation, weeping, and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted because they are no more. But in total, 20 or fewer boys were killed. So that's still horrible.
Why did they mention Rachel?
It's just in the prophecy, and I was thinking about that. Rachel and Jacob? Rebecca and Jacob. No. Rebecca and Isaac, Jacob and Rachel. So she would have been the grandmother or the mother. She would have been a mother in this. So it's just a prophecy, right?
Is that the region or something?
Ramah is, yes. And it really is in Jeremiah when Israel's going into exile. And there's weeping because they're being sent. They're leaving their home, right? And they're crying because it's terrible. But the rest of Jeremiah 31 is actually hopeful. And to be honest, Israel's still in exile at this time under Roman rule. They're not out of their country, but they're not free. And Jesus actually ends this exile, right?
I wonder if Rachel's descendants had set up in Bethlehem.
Might have. It was King David's, which would be Judah, and Rachel was not Judah's mom.
Was Rachel Joseph's mom?
Yes. Joseph and Benjamin. Right. Yes, for her children. So that's all going on. Now, when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared.
To Joseph again.
How? In a dream. Saying, arise, take the young child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who sought the young child's life are dead. Then he arose and took the young child and his mother and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus, who is the son of Herod, by the way, ruthless, evil son of Herod, was reigning over Judea instead of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And being warned by God in a dream, very good, see? This could be like a play. He turned aside into the region of Galilee and came and dwelled in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets. It's not one prophet who said it, but in general, you can deduce this from the Old Testament prophecies. He shall be called a Nazarene. So Nazareth was a backwater village in an area that proper Jewish people did not live.
Outside of the tracks.
Yeah, it's north. It was infiltrated with Gentiles also. So it says in John 1:46, Nazareth, what good can come from Nazareth? It says, from which nothing good can come. And to be from Nazareth brought scorn and ridicule. It also, to true Jewish, very religious people, questioned Jesus' validity. But in God's wisdom and his prophecies, he had him born in Bethlehem, but had him grow up in Nazareth. So that is how that happened. Because he identified with everyone, right?
That was one of the prophecies that he would be called a Nazarene.
Yeah.
Be despised.
Yeah. He was despised and rejected, right? A man of sorrows. So, can we see in this story that God reigns? That he is completely in charge of all history? That, like Piper mentioned, from before the foundation of the earth, he had to plan it just so. And we know Jesus is coming back. That's going to also be just so. Because God has already written and completed history. We're just in the middle of it. We're just walking it. But it's already done. Because he's outside of time. God is sovereign. He is sovereign over all. Nothing can happen to us unless he allows it. And if he allows it, he's going to work it for our good. What the devil meant for bad, God meant for good. God decides history and God uses who he pleases. He used Herod. It was part of what needed to happen. I mean, he could have sent the Magi directly to Bethlehem, right? They didn't need to take a detour. That star didn't need to disappear for a minute. But it did, because otherwise prophecies wouldn't have been fulfilled. Our God is amazing, and he's going to do what he's going to do. So, I don't know. It's a super cool story. It's amazing. So just like Joseph parallels the Joseph of the Old Testament, Herod parallels Pharaoh. Yep. Remember what happened to Moses when he was born after a little while? Right? He was hidden because all the other babies were killed, the male babies. And so it's just interesting to see how God shows it in the Old Testament as a pointing toward what's going to happen when the Messiah comes. The story shows up all over the place. So, my questions for us are, what has it cost you to follow Jesus? Cost the Magi quite a bit of money, effort, danger, I'm sure. And what are you willing to do when God calls? I'm sorry, I have an appointment. I can't go to Bethlehem. Or we're going to say yes and then rejoice with exceedingly great joy when we find him. And how will you worship him? How do you respond to being in the presence of Jesus? Those are things I want us to ponder and talk about. And we have one more song, and I can't for the life of me remember which one. Oh, sorry. Sorry, people.